All right, welcome back. On today's episode, we have a guest who knows a thing or two about being a good operator. Chase, welcome to Bootstrapping to Billions.
Thanks, Chris. Pumped. So what I was hoping to do here right out of the gate is I think a lot of folks think of finance as like this box to check and this and that. And like what I want to kind of talk about is like building a cash machine. So what is the difference between like a six-figure kind of, business that's being run versus like a seven-figure cash machine? And what I mean by that is like something that largely runs in the background without the operator. They still have to operate it, but this thing runs methodically, it runs systematically, it runs sustainably, and most importantly, it runs profitably. So I'm going to walk through kind of this thing. It's a playbook we've run from private equity turnarounds. It's a playbook we use for bootstrap companies that are looking to self-fund aggressive growth. Same kind of principles apply. You don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money, but you still need to hit a very aggressive growth or turnaround objectives. This is the playbook we've run dozens and dozens and dozens of times over and over. It 100% works. Some stuff is pretty basic, but it's just about doing it and executing it really well and being very, very intentional. So I'll kind of walk through exactly like, here's what has to get done, here's how it has to get done, etc., and we'll knock it out.
So a lot of our audience are bootstrappers. Many of us are building, healthy six-figure, seven-figure businesses. Many of us, at the end of the day, cash flow is the constraint, right? Cash flow is the thing that keeps our business. You know a thing or two about cash flow, right? You also are an operator. So to give the audience a little bit of a background, you've been living this life for a long time. I believe you did, you were involved, I think, with a turnaround in the healthcare space, right? So you kind of saw it from that lens. And then you were also in the weeds just running businesses. What did you do? Was it a bike shop and a ski lodge?
Yeah, that's good point. Like that's probably a fair place to start this. So like background in accounting and finance and things like that as like an analyst out of college and this and that and going into this, but really like this is all kind of shaped from like I was in startups, like the venture backed startups that kind of their road to IPO, that kind of stuff. But then I went out after that and built my own businesses. I worked in private equity and really kind of focused on turnarounds. So I did do like hospital turnarounds originally, and then for this private equity group, it was like hospitality businesses or kind of just like whatever these guys bought. Fixing.
Is that how you pulled it back into this concept of like building a cash flow machine for really like seven-figure SMBs?
Yep, 100%. And the thing is like a private equity turnaround and a bootstrapped company and its founder are kind of like in very similar places. Like when you come into a turnaround, you often don't have a lot of cash. The business has been losing money. Things are low. Maybe you get a little infusion from the group that's coming in, but sometimes you don't have additional cash to work with. You just have to kind of live with what you got. And so bootstrappers are self-funding their growth. They're self-funding. And so a lot of the same principles. So like this is heavily based off of like the playbook we would run in private equity on a turnaround. And so I can kind of walk through like, here's the process. And I think the translation for bootstrappers then, which is a lot of what this was built for, is then to kind of come in and start running that same playbook that you might not be losing money. Maybe you are, maybe you're not making that much, but the elements are the same. You somehow have to self-fund and create your own sources of cash flow. And so what's the process to do that quickly and efficiently?
I love that.
Let's kind of jump in there. So like I'll skip to the like let's just get into this. And I'll kind of say like I'll frame this in a couple different ways. First, I'll go through like here's the playbook, and then I'll run out like and here's like the actual actions to do this thing. And I'll move fast, but stop me wherever it's like, okay, like, let's go a little bit further on this or something like that. So
Take it, dude. This is like definitely a teach, train, equip type of episode for sure. Squeeze the
cool.
value. We'll squeeze the value out of
Yeah.
this.
So first and foremost is like, you've got like a lot of times your boat is leaky. It might not be sinking leaky, but it might not be, what's the seafaring term? Like it's not seaworthy necessarily. Like it's not floating. So maybe you're profitable, but it's like 5% margins or like 8% margins or something like
Yeah,
that.
you're
Or
literally
it
keeping
is,
afloat. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's kind of there. And before, like a lot of people will come into this, and especially like I'll make a distinction. We kind of talk about lifestyle businesses, bootstrap, cash flow business, that kind of stuff. Like this is really targeted on the founder that's self-funding and aggressively growing. So there's some lifestyle businesses that it's on coast mode. This is kind of assuming like you are in growth mode and you're trying to build something much
Sustainable
larger.
growth.
Right. And you need to do it on your own kind of steam. And so like the first thing a lot of clients we hear kind of like them saying like, oh, I'm just at this level. I need to grow. We've got to get more in kind of this. And the reality is that if at a unit economics level, you're not profitable, you basically have a hole in your boat and then you just attach a jetpack engine to it. And then all of a sudden the hole just fills with water that much faster. So the first thing we do when we get into a company that's like struggling or we need to kind of get turned around or ratchet up the growth is like, make sure that the unit economics are solid. So, take a look at kind of a breaking everything down and the tactical approach and kind of like the accounting piece of this. And we could talk about the other operational pieces of it is like getting your books and your chart of accounts in a place where you can actually look at this on a regular basis. So a lot of people look at just a P&L that comes straight out of QuickBooks and just has like everything kind of dumped in it, however it is. And what you think you're looking at is just like a list of places you spent money. And that's not what your P&L should be. And that's not kind of the most effective way to use it. What I recommend is setting up a chart of accounts that like on the revenue, like breaks out all of the different business lines, not necessarily individual products, but like, is like course revenue, consulting revenue, recurring projects or recurring, services and projects or whatever kind of those things are that you base it like, and the way I would kind of distinguish between those is like when you're building something and if you're going to invest in like building, selling, whatever, I want it to be fairly customer facing, not internal facing. I don't really care like about how I view it. I want to think about it how my customer views it and see what's driving growth, what's behind, what's moving, what's, whatever. So that's kind of the first thing. Then setting up a cost of goods that is a true cost of goods. And for a lot of the bootstrap companies, it's service businesses. So cost of services, it's all the same. The main thing is like the thing that gets missed most often, everybody's good about putting software in this and that. The thing that gets missed most often is labor. Labor is usually just a line that's like contractors and salaries in one place. I want that split out. I want I want labor that's associated with delivery up in cost of services. I want labor that's associated with sales in cost of sales. I want to put those different things in it. And I want to be able to look at a P&L that shows like, here's my cost of services. And I've got to think everything in terms of like a percentage of revenue when we're thinking about like, we've got to get unit level. Like it's fine to do the back of the envelope math to be like, oh, I paid this much per hour and I charge this much per hour and da da da. And so like, I should be profitable. It's another thing to like have it broken down on your P&L to show actual spend going in and show like, this is my cost of services when you factor in all the software and you factor in the contractors and you factor in the labor and whatever else. What is that margin? I'm going to use a broad example for a lot of service businesses, like 40%. I don't care every month what the dollar amount is. I'm not looking at the dollar amount going like, I spent $68,000. Is that good? Is it bad? I don't know. I don't frankly care. What I do care is that $68,000 is 46% of revenue or 38% of revenue or 70% of revenue or whatever it is. Like that's a variable cost that I want to make sure the budget I'm tracking is a percentage to revenue, because I know, and then this goes to kind of the other two blocks, my cost of sales needs to be at 15%, my overhead needs to be at 15% as well, or 12% or 20% or whatever those things are. It adds up, call it, 40, 15, 15, now it's 70%. So that's a 30% margin. That's where I want to live, and that's where I want to budget, and that's where we're profitable at. And so I'm tracking every single month to make sure at a unit level, but it actually shows up in the monthly P&L that I'm spending 40% on delivery, 15% on sales, 15% on overhead. And that's kind of like the first thing, like making sure that that's solid and
Let me break this down.
knowing where you need to pull from.
Let me pull this back for a second for the audience, for the folks listening, because you just dumped a ton of information, a ton of knowledge on a lot of folks really quick. And everybody, is in different places of their journey, right? Everything starts somewhere. Some folks are just getting started. I love the content. So for anybody who's not familiar with yourself, I've been following your content on LinkedIn for a really long time, and you give a ton of practical advice. Like, you keep it simple. You really kind of, take that very authentic approach in terms of the information. We're getting into this concept of the cash flow machine, but one of the things that you tagged into is, how you approached it from the beginning of like a turnaround. And what I really love about what I just listened to is on the buy side, right? Looking at deals. You could really tell the difference between a business, especially like you could tell the difference between like a 6-figure business or a 7-figure business or an entrepreneur who's kind of been doing it for a little bit, especially when you're looking at the deal, like an exit ready deal, based off of exactly what you just described in terms of how everything is line itemed out. So it matters, right? It matters now as you're running this business. And then it also definitely matters as you're getting exit ready and you're starting to present your deals. So for a lot of reasons, like hopefully folks listening really know that there's something important here that matters and they could take the action now to start working. All right, team, hopefully you're enjoying today's episode. I want to quickly take a break to show you where you can go from first dollar all the way to final exit and everything in between to be able to build equity, unlock capital, and exit with ownership in your business. It's bootstrapper.ai. And once you get inside the platform, it's going to give you everything that you need to be able to run your business, track your equity, go on, unlock capital, and then exit with ownership. It's truly a really remarkable experience. It's taking your data into consideration. It's helping you plan for better exits in terms of your personal exit as well as your business exit. It's going to give you and prompt you with challenges to be able to go on and build equity. And then it's going to help you track things like risk inside of your business, so you know exact levers that you should be pulling at the exact moment to go on and increase that equity so that you can then unlock capital, and when you're ready, exit with ownership. All right, get back to the episode. Through it. But we're looking at unit economics. You said that early in. I see it on the screen. You kind of just described like the approach to it. But like for folks listening that don't know what it is, like what does unit economics even mean? Like what is?
Yeah, fair enough. So at a per whatever your unit is, do you make money is like the easiest way to put it, whether you're selling services. And I wouldn't say
which don't matters, right? Like this stuff matters.
Totally.
There's a profit in your pocket.
This is like the biggest cornerstone. This is kind of all that matters. Like at the end of the day, this is like the thing in your business. And so for service businesses, I don't like thinking about a lot of people will do the math to figure out unit level economics of I pay $75 an hour for a contractor. I bill them at 150. Cool. Or my employee, if I do the math backwards, it's $46 an hour and I charge 80 or whatever kind of the thing is. And they think that's kind of, that is a level of unit economics. I think of it more in terms of the unit sold, what someone buys. So if you're services and you're doing monthly retainers, looking at the unit level profitability of a monthly engagement or a project or something like that, which needs to include the labor that it took to do that. But it's not just the labor that gets billed, it's the non-productive labor as well. So you've got to assume now some sort of capacity. We can come back to that because that gets sort of into the weeds. But it's not just like if you have an employee and they make 46 bucks an hour or whatever, it's not just 46 bucks an hour. That's assuming you were billing them at, you know, 2,080 hours a year, like completely, but you're not. You're definitely not going to be able to do that. There's time for all kinds of other stuff. There's 2 weeks vacation, and there's like dead time, and there's administrative time, and there's like all kinds of stuff that needs to be factored in there. And so like you need to come to a new rate that it's like actually utilized billable capacity. It's actually 58 bucks an hour or 60 or whatever it is. So like understanding like there, like what is the actual cost to deliver that in factoring in all that different piece. And then two, it took you time to like develop those leads, to close it, et cetera. Especially if you're just starting and you're doing most of the delivery, you got to think about your time. That if you're like charging 200 bucks an hour, like, oh, great, I make 200 bucks an hour. No, if you're spending half your time selling and half your time delivering, you are now making at best 100 bucks an hour. And if you're doing any administrative stuff, it's probably more like 70 bucks an hour. And you quickly whittle down to like after you're working and paying kind of the fixed costs, like the 65 bucks an hour you actually make, not so great. And so you've got to build in like your pricing and everything like that. So when we're talking about unit economics, it's like, A, how are you pricing this? B, are you factoring in all of the like, you know, cost of delivery? And C, are you factoring in the cost of sales to get to this kind of place? And then that's kind of your, like what we would call contribution to overhead. But
yeah, no, and then to bring it into the
for now,
folks
but
listening,
like that's the, yeah.
it's like, so, you know, everybody's somewhere, right? Some folks are exit one, they're trying to exit their day job, make their business their job. Some exit two, building a team, right? Exit out of doing the work, start building a team. Some folks are trying to exit out of managing people, building a business system, and some folks later stage, operational exit or real exit. It matters. This stuff matters at every single stage. And we'll hear a lot of entrepreneurs a lot of times just getting started, and they'll care about that thing that matters at the top to them, like the revenue coming in. And they're like, oh man, I have this much sales and I just brought in this much revenue and everything's great. But when you're starting to actually think about, now we're hiring, now we're staffing, now we're systematizing, right? That's when this level of care truly shapes your cash flow machine. This is when your business starts to materialize and matter, and puts you in that position you said earlier, sustainable growth.
Yeah. And to that, like, I think a lot of people focus on this growth. Like, okay, I got to grow. We need more, like I need to make more profit. I need to make more money. Like it all comes down to growth. And in this unit level of economics, like it's very possible that if you haven't paid much attention to this, if you're not tracking it, if it's not like a priority, like maybe it's fine. Maybe it's even good. It's potentially bad, but like, imagine, you know, getting an extra 10% of it. Like I use the example here on the screen of like getting, if you've got 30 clients currently, is it easier to get an extra 3 clients? Like that's 10%. Like how hard won are each one of those clients? Or, and in this example, I'm using like 1,500 bucks per client. Would it be easier to like bump all of your clients up to 1,650 a month in terms of like providing more value or this or that? And it could be that like, again, that's like profit. So that doesn't even have to be changing their pricing. It might be moving the pricing a little bit. It might be like streamlining labor. It might be cutting, whatever it is. Is it easier to find 10% in margin or add 10%? And a lot of times it's in the market. Like you can, like a very legitimate growth tactic for a lot of our turnarounds. Like you don't have the money to throw at growth and business development and sales. So the first thing you do is you find every dollar you can in the unit level economics, and getting more out of what you've got coming in or are serving already. So,
and if you're a business owner right now, that's literally just like equity in your pocket that you're capturing. That's
Money
value that
in your
you're
pocket.
adding like right away,
Yeah.
immediately. And it's important to think, because a lot of us are trying to, we're maybe on social and we see all of this glitz and glamour and we think that you need to think a certain way and it's all about growth at all costs. And sometimes we watch Silicon Valley or whatever it is, like pop culture, kind of like embedding this into our brains. But the reality is sometimes that question of like, maybe we don't acquire that next customer is the right type of
Totally.
customer.
And this is exactly what like venture backed stuff. I'm not going to say this doesn't matter, but you're not going to hear this on podcasts where they're talking about how they, 5x growth, and like you're selling when you're selling in venture capital, you're selling like product market fit and growth levels. And this like has catch on, and this has a huge TAM, and like every step is like based on certain metrics that revolve around like how fast you're growing, how big this could get, et cetera. This sort of like future state. Very little, if any, is based on like how much does this make. As a bootstrapper, if you find, and this is why we focus exclusively on bootstrappers, is like, honestly, it's just much more fun. Like if we can just do a killer job and find 10%, in their margins wherever by sharpening their pricing or like streamlining this or whatever, that's like, we just gave them them and their family, we just gave a 10% raise to. Like, how often do you get to just like, 30 days later, I make 10% more?
Right? Yeah.
It's awesome. So this is like, it's really important, like very, very important. So let me dive into kind of like, all right, so, unit level economics, I was talking like, here's how you kind of track this, like set up your book so that you can look at this and understand on a monthly basis. All right, what are my different categories? What is my target? And again, I think the most successful turnarounds, and as such, the most successful like projects, clients, anything, it's never the complexity. If we can get them to be like, three things in our world, like every day I wake up and I think about these three things. What are those three things that if you get these three right, it kind of doesn't matter. Like you can make a bunch of other mistakes and it will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll keep going, you'll keep moving up, etc. And so what are those like
Keep it
those
simple things.
core kind of things? Right. Just wake up every day, hammer those particular things. And for a lot of folks, it's like, all right, new customers in, average value of a customer, and maybe for service businesses like capacity, making sure my utilization stays strong or whatever. But there's like a handful of things in getting that dialed in and making sure that then you can look on a monthly basis and track it. And like, I think the most important thing is like, I know I need to live at 40% cost of services, 15% cost of sales, 15%. That is a 30% margin. Life is good at 30%. Like, cool. And that's it. Don't overcomplicate anything from there.
Life is good math. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Measure
Right.
what matters for the life is good math.
Yeah. So like getting into this, like, all right, how do we find 10% or whatever? I usually start with pricing, like taking a look at both, like, what are we charging? And, part of that conversation is like, what is the market rate? What is our competition charging? Like, what can they afford, et cetera, like stuff like that. But also thinking about like the structure of pricing, like, are you currently charging on a monthly basis? Is it quarterly? Is it this? Is it this including this, et cetera? And in this tool, we built this thing that like, I wrote down absolutely every single pricing strategy structure that I could possibly think of. And it's like hourly, retainers, flat rate projects, performance-based contracts, memberships, licensing, events, royalties, workshops, sprints, like every single thing. Like, is there a way you can repackage this to where it's like more valuable to the end customer, et cetera? Like we had one client that was like in manufacturing. They were trying to grow. They were trying to like, it was extreme, like manufacturing, any kind of product stuff, extremely resource intensive, right? You've got to like buy all the raw materials. Then you got to pay for all the stuff to get done to it, to turn it into a thing. Then you got to sell it to retailers. Then you have to give those retailers 30, 60, 90-day terms. Sometimes you're looking at 9 months of like spending cash before you see almost any of it come back. That is brutal. And so this client was really struggling to grow because even though they were profitable, they just never had any money. So there's nothing to kind of reinvest into this. And their thing was like, we were talking to them and we're like, okay, you have this great tech. Your tech is kind of the thing. Like you guys made this thing. It's incredible. It's one of the best, etc. How's your manufacturing? We kind of outsource it. It's fine, whatever. Like your sauce is not manufacturing. Great. Okay. What about licensing or royalties? Like get completely out of the manufacturing, tack on a whatever percent and go license this to someone whose specialty is the manufacturing. They can do it at scale. They can do it faster. And all you're doing now is selling and royalties, or even outsourcing the selling of it to someone else, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly this business goes to an extremely capital light business at insanely high margins. And it's not as big of a top line. And sometimes that bothers the ego of but like, let me tell you about the checks that you took home after.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
you know, and sometimes it just takes like thinking about things like a little bit
This is killer.
differently.
So like I just want to unpack this. So what I heard you just say is almost looking at the capital capture strategies, right? So what you identified is all of these ways in which we could potentially capture capital from our business. And then you're looking at like the constraints on the business. And you're trying to match, what is the best capital capture strategy with the one that's the lightest or the best, the leanest, with the fewest constraints to just let it flow.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find flow. You're trying to find cash flow from this type of process, which is like a killer approach.
Right. Yeah. And so finding like, okay, like if we're looking at pricing, sometimes it's as simple as like, we should just have increased our prices. We haven't done it in a while. Sometimes it is an overhaul that you move business models to something completely different. But at the end of the day, like there's a lot we could go into kind of like resource allocation and capital planning and stuff like that. But like really at the core of this is just how do we get to much better unit level economics to where like if we were to ramp up, this thing does much better. It's much like stronger profitability, et cetera. And so like the easiest way to improve your, unit economics, everything stays the same, just raise the price. Okay. Or it can be restructure it to where that cost gets repackaged in a different way. And so it's not raising the price, it's changing it. But in doing so, you still increase the like price per work done, et cetera, things like that. So pricing, customer value. Then looking at cost of goods. So like, how do you find ways to deliver this better, faster, et cetera? There's so much to be said here on like, I won't go into this because there's a bajillion podcasts on AI and offshore talent. But just there's like a ton of ways that, you can usually find at least 10% or more kind of laying around just by like streamlining stuff, getting your delivery. And a lot of times it can be like, technically you're extremely profitable. You're 30% based on that kind of back of the envelope. Here's how we charge, blah, 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 blah. But it never gets there. And it's just because of this like sloppy squish around the edges that it's just like, well, the team isn't utilized as much as they could be, or this is like, so the cost of goods, it's not always just like saving money or spending less. Sometimes it's about managing capacity or other things to just sharpen it a little bit to make sure that it's, more of it's going to what it's supposed to and less of it's getting kind of wasted on the fringes. So cost of goods. And then overhead is kind of the thing that people usually think when they're like, we got to find money. We got to kind of lean things and tighten the belt and whatever. They usually go to their subscription list and they're like, well, we don't need this subscription. And it's like, congratulations. You just like, even if you cut 100% of your software budget, you saved 1.8% of revenue. It's not exactly going to get us, like when labor is 65% or something like that. But do you do it all the same? Sure.
What's your school of thought? So what do you subscribe to? It feels like everybody kind of has a different perspective and approach. Some folks go for like the revenue growth playbook. Some folks go for the cost cutting playbook. Private equity all the time gets the bad rap for just cutting costs, right? Because it's that realized immediate. What's your perspective?
I mean, it depends on who goes. Private equity is usually like acquiring something and then flipping it around. And so they're like trying to find something kind of in what's the existing, structure or something like that. I'll say I've never seen anyone cut their way to success. Yeah. Like you can cut your way to options. You can cut your way to like a longer runway. You can cut your way to like more cash available but you're going to have to grow your way through it one way or another. So I look at like cost cutting as be super focused and super disciplined about the structure of expense and then stop thinking about it. Then just focus on kind of growing the business, increasing like, growing from like more customers in, but also a value per customer kind of thing. Like that usually is the things that get the biggest jolts. And if you're looking at good, clean books, you'll quickly see like, all right, 40% is in cost of services, 15, and I'll keep hammering this over and over and over again. And in the overhead line item, if software is like 2% of that, do not spend a whole bunch of time going through every single software. Like maybe later, yeah, go kind of do some pruning or stuff like that. But your time, your energy, your effort, all of that stuff needs to be at where like you can do the most damage with as little effort as possible. And so start with that stuff that it's like labor. Like, I don't think it's necessarily about cutting your way to success or cutting like kind of the private equity stake. But if you can get to like a more efficient delivery system that it's like currently it's 60% cost of goods, cost of services, that needs to be 50%. And then it needs to get to closer to 45% or something like that. Like structurally shifting so that you can deliver on that. That does make a really, really big difference on kind of growth and profitability and money to your pocket, all that kind of
It's
stuff.
really more optimization than cutting in that situation.
Yeah, getting that. And ultimately, like if you are an aggressively growing business, this is not necessarily to like, I mean, yes, you can save it, it's money to your pocket. But what I would want to see is like, and especially in a turnaround, we're not taking this money out of the business. We're cutting these costs, we're streamlining, delivery, all that kind of stuff to essentially get cash available that we can invest in the product and growth. Like that's what we're doing is we're trying to free up cash to move it to this other expense item, which is where another kind of philosophical things bootstrappers tend to get hung up on is like, just be cheap. Just spend as little as possible. And so they'll come in and they'll be like, I don't need this and I don't need this and I don't need. That's, I think, the wrong way to approach bootstrapping. You need to think about it like, yeah, you have to think about this as like self-funding your own growth. And that is going to cost money. And so if there is software that costs $200 a month per user and you're like, that's ridiculous, but it's going to allow my sales team to move so much faster and close deals, or it's going to allow my delivery team to be much more efficient and clean up kind of the slop around the fringes and get us to 40. Like that's by far worth it. And so invest where you're intentional about this and getting like the structure, those margins, those percentages where you need to be. But it's not to spend as little as possible. It's to put it into the highest returning places possible. And so cut this because like you don't need to be spending that much on this. Redeploy it down here to growth, redeploy it to like adding capacity, redeploy it to something that furthers the business. It is not a don't spend money kind of strategy. And I think that's really, really important for like bootstrappers to kind of lock in mentally that it is not a game of don't spend money.
Yeah, I think it's important for folks to hear. So if you made it this far in the episode and listening, then maybe this is actually something you're feeling right now and you're interested in. A lot of this stuff feels like overwhelming to a lot of SMBs. Like they didn't become an SMB to do this in their business necessarily. Like they became an SMB to do something else, and this is just a byproduct of one of the responsibilities that falls within that. And they're like, oh man, there's a lot, right? But the thing that hopefully folks can take away is, maybe you partner with somebody like Chase, right? Or you learn it, you just learn it and you just do it, and the outcome will become simple, right? What you really just gave us in this is a playbook for keeping it simple. If you do this work, it gives you a framework to just make simple decisions better and make good timely decisions better. And it may feel like a lot at this moment to try to figure it all out. But if you go get the help and you get it done, then you just put yourself on a hopefully easier street of keep it simple for the long-term sustainability of your business, which matters, right? Like this is what you're doing with your life. Just get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it is going to be like making it as simple as possible because you've got 1,000 things going on. Like you do not need to be like digging into 47 KPIs and tracking this and that and whatever, and having this and like automating this and syncing that, like it is not, it really comes down to like boiling this down to, okay, hypothetically, how much am I pricing it? Does this make sense? Like how I'm packaging and selling this, and then looking at books on a regular monthly basis at the very least and saying like, okay, here's where I landed. Here's where I need to be. Here's where I landed. Here's where I need to be, etc. And then saying like, okay, if I'm going to spend time working on my business this month, and I can see that I need to be at 45% cost of goods, cost of services, and I'm currently at 58. My time needs to be spent figuring out how to get my cost of delivery. And maybe it's a capacity issue that it's like, we're going to grow out of it as we just add more revenue and the delivery team stays the same. Maybe it's the contractors you've got. It's like, there's time unaccounted for that you've got to pay the contractor to do all these other things that isn't billable time, and you've got to fact whatever it is, but like that's now your focus. It's not like, don't overcomplicate it with the what, you'll figure that out. But on a monthly basis, you just need to first focus like, where do I need to be putting my attention? And then, all right, maybe it's pricing, maybe it's delivery, maybe it's sales, etc. But you're doing this and you're thinking about it intentionally and investing your time and your cash into those points that kind of make sense.
Yeah, and it's not just a check the box, like let's get it done once a week or once a month, close out the books. It's like put yourself in a position to use it as a tool. And this is something that you can leverage in your business. How often do you see business owners that you're working with? Because like, who's your ideal client?
Typically we work with like, well, I'll say it's like bootstrap cash flow businesses, meaning aggressively growing, self-funded, exactly kind of what we're harping on here.
Bootstrap
a lot of
capital
times
universe for sure.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times it's agencies. A lot of times it's like indie hacker SaaS. Sometimes it's like hybrid software services, media, a lot of content creators, newsletter operators, that kind of stuff. And then a handful of like stuff that really felt like, a handful of restaurants that like, there's a lot of much more traditional businesses that fit into this as well. Mm-hmm. But think about like digital based businesses, marketplaces, courses, stuff like that the intent is to like is to put money into the pockets of the person. Maybe you want to sell it someday. Maybe you want to run it forever. It doesn't matter. But like the money from the business goes to you and it's not
your life.
Ramp up. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's who we kind of work with. And like what I would say, like, let's take a look at what this looks like in real life. Just kind of this piece of it. It's not super complicated. It's not. And when we talk about building a 7-figure machine, mm-hmm. The real operative word here is machine, meaning a machine is not a thing that you jump in and you start doing all the stuff and pulling all the things. It is a thing that runs and you have to run it. Like sometimes there are very like good passive whatever. That's not necessarily like this. This does require operation at some level, but it is a machine that should be running. And so whether you're doing it or whatever, a lot of times I go over all this stuff and I'm like, it's simple. It's X, and they kind of like clients or prospective clients will look kind of dejected. And it's like, they're expecting this like big thing that's like this really clever like hack or solution or tool or whatever. And when it's like, wait, so you're just saying like price and run it profitably, manage my cash flow and this, like, that's boring. And it's like, it is. And they're kind of like, well, I mean, I don't really, and I always ask like, are you doing it?
Yeah. The hard part's
like,
just doing it, right?
Like
consistently forever.
And it's like, well, like I keep it up for the most part, or like I did for a while, and it's like, that's a no. And like, if you are, the importance of this and kind of the like, so looking at it, like, what does this actually look like? It looks like on the first of the month, you go about your work knowing that invoices got shipped and they're right and they're accurate and it's getting billed as quickly as possible right up front. On the 10th of the month or the 12th or the 7th or the 15th, whatever it is, you're reviewing your financials and you're looking at what did my revenue look like? How did that compare to last month? How did it compare to a year ago? How did it compare to kind of our rolling average? What is it breaking down by like our business lines? What is our cost of delivery? How does that compare as a percentage of revenue to those other kind of things last month, rolling average, et cetera, as well as a target or a budget potentially? What is my cost of sales? What is my overhead? If any of those are way out of line, then you click into it, expand it, and see like where, why, etc. But a lot of times we're doing that for you. And so you're going to get those reports. And if there's any variances, we're going to call it out and say like, here's what's going on here. It's primarily from these three things, blah, 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 blah.
So you're saying first step is just do it, right? Get it done, do it. Second step, red, yellow, green it. Right?
Yep.
Look at that. And then if it's off, drill in.
Yep, exactly. And then that's where it gets to the like, okay, so what are we doing about it? Then it starts to, I'm not going to say get more complicated, but get more focused. That's when we start talking about like, all right, is this a pricing problem? Is this a value per client? Like if revenue is off, a lot of people go like, we got to grow. Like, we didn't sell as much. And it's like, maybe first, like it's a function of like, all right, how many new customers did come in times value of client. A lot of times it's like the pipeline is cranking, but your value per client keeps getting lower and lower and lower and lower. And it's because you've sacrificed like quality of pipeline for just volume. And maybe that's working out, but maybe it's not. And so understanding like, okay, to solve revenue going flat, it's not shove more through it. It's what do we need to do on the product side? What do we need to do on the sales side? How do we increase either the number of things that a customer is buying from us or the value of those things? And so it's like, well, maybe we need to change our pipeline to target a larger client. Maybe it's like we need to add more stuff so that like instead of an $800 offering that really wins, it's a $1,200, and the $1,200 has twice, like whatever those kinds of things are, etc. Like understanding like what is the actual thing, and then keeping it very simple, clear everything off the deck, and it's just like, okay, I've looked at the numbers. I'm just going to work with the product team on how do we make a $1,500 product, and how do we make it can't say no, like absolutely killer. Okay, that's what you work on. And then you will see in the numbers, like if you were just extremely disciplined and focus on that one particular thing, suddenly you watch your average value start tick up and your revenue kind of climb and everything. It's not about like, I've got to do 19 things. It's about looking at the numbers, isolating the 2 things you need to do, hammer those for 30, 60, 90 days, whatever, and then watch the kind of progress that comes out of it. So that's really what's at the core of this, is like being much more intentional about where you spend your time and your money, because you have a very limited amount of both of them. And if you just continue to hit the same, like, we need more clients, we need more clients, we need more, and you're not addressing the like cost of delivery, like slop that's, bleeding, you're not addressing the average value thing that's degrading, whatever that kind of stuff is, you're putting 80% of the work for 20% of the effort, when we really want to be doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, dude. And just think about what you just said. So it's like, we've been living this life for a really, really long time, right? Similar. So we all know that, we know that persona of the folks that we're talking to right now. And it's like shiny object is a very real thing, right? You're an owner or CEO of a business or a founder of a business. It's like very much so, what's the 18 things, like you said, that we need to do, instead of like really strategy equals focus. Like, what's the one thing we need to do right? And you should probably do right now. And it's just like, I feel like more folks need to talk about this being the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals, and then working with somebody like yourself to create the accountability. Because it's like that structure, and that structure meets strategy is what gives that focus, to that accountability, to just like keep it simple, do the right things, keep it trucking every week over week, like small wins, right? Stack,
100%.
Just stack them,
But that's, you nailed it. Like the win here is not like a Herculean effort to knock this out. It's doing this little basic dumb thing week in, week out. And either A, you need to do it, or B, what happens a lot of times is like it quickly becomes not worth, the founder's time to do it. So they want to have someone like us come in or someone else and do it for them. But the main thing is like, make sure this happens every single, because the value comes from compounding over time, not you did it here or there and spot things. It's a lot like exercising. it just only goes so far when you do it once in a while. If you make a habit of it, then you develop a much more physically fit or economically fit enterprise here. And so it's really about that kind of thing. I want to use that. That's a perfect lead into like what you're saying about kind of the next section and really operationalizing this. So like what that looks like is that sort of like, you know, here's what I'm looking at in my finances. I'm looking at this thing. I'm quickly getting to a handful of things. So that's what that piece looks like, and working your way to where those blocks of cost all match up to a profitable, you know, economics kind of piece. That's very different than actual cash, right? Like cash and profits are not the same thing. And especially you know that if you're like a branding agency that charges $250,000 a project with like 40, you know, percent margins, but you get paid 100,000 up front and, you know, 150K at the end. You spend a lot of months feeling like you have no money, even though you're very profitable or stuff like that. So like positive cash cycle is probably the biggest thing that like your accountants can do for you if it's done really well. And this has very, very real. This is another thing, like I'll stress this really heavy here. This is one of those things that nobody thinks about, that everyone kind of like I'm making product, I'm doing this thing. I did what you said, like my unit economics are great. Like we're cranking, we're like, we've got 60% margins on this tech project and blah, blah, blah. And they're all over the place and it's good. And they're like, we have no money, or like we need to take on investors, or we need to get a line of credit. And I'll be like, whoa, wait, why? And it's like, well, we just don't have any money for this. Like, and we need to be growing and we need to be inventing. It's like, okay, hold on. So I have up here on the screen, and I'll talk through if people aren't watching this, but essentially two scenarios perfectly illustrates. Like scenario one is like, I'll call it the not paying attention scenario. And it's like you have 30K in revenue and 12 of expenses, of direct expenses for an ending profitability of this project over 12 weeks of $18,000. Both of them the same margin, same exact margin, right? When they don't care about it, it's like they sign the deal and 2 weeks later an invoice goes out, and they pay a contractor 50% in week 3, and they collect their first payment in week 5, and they pay a contractor in week 7, and then they collect their second payment, and then they collect their final payment. Same profitability. The average cash in their bank account, you can see if you're looking at it, basically the cash goes up and down and up and down, but the average balance they carry through those 12 weeks, just over 3,500 bucks, 1,600.
But Chase, what do you mean? I just signed an $18,000, right, $16,000 contract.
And multiple times, they go negative over this period of time. So the whole time they feel like they've got no money. A lot of the times, like the cash balance is like all over the place. It's negative. So you're eating into the margin from other projects that you'd already closed. It goes up, then it goes down negative again. And then it ends at a high. But if you've got multiple, if you just signed another client, guess what? You just got that money in and it went right back out because that project went negative as well. Okay. So let's just, averaging the average amount in your bank account on any given week is 3,600 bucks. Exact same scenario. Now we sign and we invoice right away, like right out of the gate, a certain percentage, I think a third of it, and you collect within 2 weeks. So instead of invoicing after 2 weeks and collecting after 5, you're signing, invoicing, and you're collecting that first payment within 2 weeks, 14-day terms. Okay. You're collecting a progress payment at week 6, and then a third payment on week 12. You're paying your contractor still like week 4, week 8. That's slightly back from week 3 and week 7, whatever. That doesn't make a huge difference, but you're not paying the contractor up front. You're getting paid. You shuffle that stuff around. The cash balance of this scenario stays positive the whole time. At no point do you go negative on this. Average cash balance, it's not 5,000. It's not an extra 8. It's $15,000. Like you're sitting on an average, like imagine having an extra $12,000 on average in your bank account over 12 weeks. If you have any solid pipeline, or it's like you've got any type of thing that it's like, look, if I invest this much in 30 days, I'm getting this new business out. And like, if you've got any type of like pipeline business development, funnel that you can do that, imagine what you can do on a per client basis here with an extra 12 grand on any given month. Like,
imagine how it would make you feel. Imagine the relief you're gonna feel.
Oh my God, the stress. And like all we did, we changed nothing about the pricing. We changed it. We just changed how regimented you were, like the terms of the deal, and we changed how fast you invoiced. And like in that first scenario, the terms might be exactly the same, but you got the deal signed, then you got to work and you forgot to send that first invoice. And then when they didn't pay on time, you didn't follow up, whatever, you just like dragged a little bit behind. And then this contractor needed to get paid. So you just wrote him a check right away and you got that. Like, it's very, when I say this first scenario, it's not like these aren't bad business operators. They're just not thinking about it. If you've got a finance team that's like, we built this system, here's the protocol, here's the standard, like as soon as a contract goes through, accounting is alerted. They generate the invoice. They send it and make sure it's approved, good to go. They hit go. If after 2 weeks they haven't gotten paid, they follow up and they say like, hey, just checking in on this, da, da, da. Like all that kind of stuff can be, you don't have to do any of it. There just has to be an intentional system in place. And I can't stress how often like we come into a business, we do these simple things and all of a sudden they're like, man, we're making so much more money. You're not. It feels that way. Yeah. And like this comes down to like if you've got this kind of like cash flow, then when you do have profits that are available for distribution, you can feel confident being like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to pull it into my personal accounts. We're going to take a vacation. We're going to set it in the investment fund, whatever you want, but you can do it knowing that like, we're good. We're okay. Like I know where we need to be. I know this money is extra. I can bring it in versus that first scenario when you're always feeling like that. You might have a bunch of money that could be either going back into the business or you could be taking out as distributions, but you don't because you're just too uncertain and worried, not knowing like how this is going to go. So I can't stress the impact that this like simple stuff. And this is the thing that when you look at a 6-figure business and you kind of come in and it's like, whew, and then you go to a 7-figure business that just seems like it's just cranking. The founder is doing very little different, but the machine behind the scenes is completely different. So this is a big one. I think
flow it 100%.
Yep. Oh, I like that. So shorten your time to close, move up collections, move back payments, align your revenue and payments. Is like there's a handful of like basic stuff you can do to get it kind of sorted and get this kind of like, again, the cash flow timing makes a huge difference. So those are the two things that if you're doing those two things, like when we go into that turnaround, if you're trying to bootstrap growth, whatever the situation, first get those unit level economics, then optimize and kind of tighten up the cash cycle so you're sitting on more cash. Now you've got the cash and a profitable product to throw it through. Now find whatever business development, pipeline channel, whatever source that's working for you and start shoving weight behind that and start pushing it. That's how you aggressively grow. And then when it's running into this, these things all compound. So your profitability is better. So more cash is coming in as a net. Your cash is super tight so that, again, profitability of this, like instead of every job you have in 3,000, you've got 10. As you amplify that across more and more clients as you grow, suddenly you're sitting on more and more cash that then you can kind of redeploy. And it becomes the exact opposite of that death spiral that most people complain about. Like, I need money to grow, but I don't have money. And so I can't take the money to grow. Yeah, exactly. It breaks a company out of that cycle. It puts them onto a positive trajectory. And this is the playbook that private equity you start that, you do this, then you do this, and then you systematize and like build into the operations that this is just automatic and then you focus on the sexy stuff that like sells and closes and, you know, grows, like your product, your pipeline, your funnels, that kind of stuff. But once you need to make sure that this is kind of underneath all the gears to begin with.
Yeah, man.
So that's
I
it.
hate it so much
That's it.
that there's a stigma in the world that only venture-backed companies can get this like growth velocity. Because
Mhm.
like what you're saying is so real and we get to see it all the time. When you build a really good business and you kind of do the blocking and tackling and you lay this foundation and it works, like you can achieve very similar type of velocity of growth. The only difference is like that cash isn't going into a trash can and getting lit on fire. It's starting to come back to you and you're just building it, growing it, building the equity, you know, and hopefully putting yourself in a position where you can exit with ownership.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about kind of the benefits because you nailed on one of them. Like if you get this system, obviously, other than this, like this stuff, this is where accounting becomes more of an asset than a box to check. Like if you're
Yeah.
just having like a bookkeeper cross stuff off, that's fine. You've checked the box. If you've got a good team that's building an asset, what they've done is set up a system where you're tracking and making sure that the profitability of individual product lines, et cetera, is staying on track. And you've engineered a cash cycle that helps fund your growth. Those are kind of the first two things. So beyond that, what's the benefit to getting like a better accounting group, firm, et cetera, or at least focusing on accounting as an asset? Um, One, even if you don't plan on selling, or even if you're not venture backed, like selling at some point might make sense.
Dude, we
There
all
might be a point
eventually
where it's
exit.
like,
whether
hey, yeah,
whether it's
there's
one
got
we
to be
want or
something.
not, we all eventually
Yeah.
exit.
Yeah. You've got kids. Maybe you're going to pass one of these off to them to run or something like that. But in any case, you want to sell a bowl so that it's possible. And like you need to have due diligence ready books. The number, and I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times. You've got probably better stories than I do. But the number of deals I've seen fall through, like prior to doing kind of the work we did, we used to do a lot of FP&A work around cap tables and raises and exits and kind of more M&A work. And the number of times we'd be modeling something out and helping them work through a deal to see it just get submarined by like bad books. Because as you said up at the top of this, like it's a huge shot to confidence. Like it's kind of one of those things that's a first impression that like if people look at your books and it is just sharp, it is thoughtful, it is organized, it is up to date, it is whatever. Suddenly everything you say about your systems and operations, it gets taken with a degree of credibility because it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I mean, I've seen how this works. I have no doubt that this. The reverse, if you start and they're like, this is sloppy, it's not kept up, and you're like, we got a sales pipeline that is tight. They're just like tight like your books. Like suddenly they don't trust anything and it just erodes trust from the very start. And so it's extremely important to like get off in this like your first foot out of the gate needs to be something where it's like you've inspired confidence because everything has tailwinds.
And it is the first
after
impression.
that.
It is pretty much
It's
going
the
to be the
first
first
thing.
impression.
Yep.
And it's like you're either going to lose
Yep.
good buyers right away, like you're saying, and that confidence, or to a certain type of buyer, you're just showing them your throat, and you're going to get beat up on that deal.
Yeah, your price is just going to like tank again because like your pool went down, and plus like you also like besides a negotiating tactic, you're introducing risk. When they don't know what's in there and everything, they've got to build into their price a certain amount of risk that things just aren't what there's, you know, like, yeah. So that's like the first thing that like having this done is like a real, like people don't think about it as like a money making thing. It's just a cost. It's a box. This is where having accounting systems makes you money. So
This is how you make
due
money.
diligence ready books. Yes. Like 100%. Like having that makes a huge difference in the price and getting deals done, to the speed of the deal, all that. Two is like decision making around this kind of stuff. Like it's very easy to be like, well, okay, it's here, there, but like as we showed, it's very easy for kind of things to kind of drift, and suddenly they're not. And when there's that uncertainty that you don't know what to kind of expect, you don't know, you don't have your cash flow planned out, you don't know this, it always feels tight, etc. You're going to be much more hesitant to like use capital to pursue an opportunity, to like put it into the extra capacity for growth, to take a shot on a new kind of channel or something like that, to take distributions when you like, I think we're profitable. I'd like to take some money home, but I don't feel confident enough to do it. All that stuff, even if it's just delayed, has a huge cost to you. Versus if you know all that stuff up front and you're making real time decisions to be like, yep, $5,000, let's put it into this. Like 10, I know we've got this like from last month, so let's put it into this thing that we can run a trial on and, X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to take, 8 out for my family, whatever those things are, you can make decisions and move on it. And that's literal money every single month to you personally, or these other things that like just doesn't happen as fast or smooth, or worse, it does happen and you didn't have the cash. And like, the cash flow wasn't, and suddenly someone doesn't pay on time, payroll comes due, and you're like, I don't know what we're gonna, and it's
a capital
all
call.
avoidable, right? It was all avoidable kind of things. That distribution you took, you're putting it back, or whatever those things are. Like it's all avoidable if you're kind of planning that out. The other one being like you have extra cash than you normally would have. So again, like in this cash flow scenario, like the money that you make is like you suddenly have more cash available to put into growth. If you put more money into it faster, you grow faster.
Yeah, make a simple
That's
bet.
like, yeah, the difference between like a full year running a really tight cash cycle and deploying that money into growth versus kind of the second scenario. You might be talking about like you cross 7 figures, like eventually, or you just knocked out a $2 million year that you kind of were forecasting, $1.2 million or something like that. Like it has huge compounding effects over a 12-month period. Like there's a bunch of different kind of things to this, but like that's where this like makes a really big difference and has a lot of like value to. The last one I'll say is like building in resilience to your business. And so like when you know your cash, when you know your business, like that kind of stuff, like you can take more aggressive bets while making sure you've built in some resilience. And I think a lot of folks think about growth as being like, I'm going to go out there and push more through the funnel and stuff like that. But there's been many, many, many times through history. I'll use an example of like, I think it was like '08, that kind of time with like creative like branding agencies and something like that. Economy's ripping, companies are throwing money at creative stuff, at assets, at marketing, at whatever, and it is just humming and everyone's printing money. Then all of a sudden, '08 happens, first money pulled back is everything they're putting towards marketing, branding, creative, etc. And suddenly like all of those companies are working with a fraction of what they had before. A bunch of them that were full throttle, pedal all the way down, etc., suddenly are just wiped out. They overhired. They weren't tracking their pipeline fast enough. Like they weren't responding quick enough. They didn't know how much they had. They didn't know how much they could kind of ratchet back. They didn't know a lot of this stuff, and it wipes them out. And others had planned. They knew where they stood. They had reserves. They like all those things they could see coming and make adjustments a lot faster. They make it through, and I'll make up the number, but it's probably not far off. Like 8 out of 10 got wiped out during this. Maybe it's 5 out of 10 or whatever, but like a lot of companies got wiped out during this point. And then 2 things happen: bounces back, and at your clients, you used to work with the team of 5 during that big, slowdown. They let a bunch of people go internally as well. Those people all got hired at different companies. Now coming back, you have 5 times the number of leads that you had before because they've all scattered to new companies. Their budgets came back. They're now looking to bring someone on. You're the one that they were working with last. And now there's 80% less competition, or 50%. Like suddenly you're the only one still around, and your clients scattered to 5 different things, and you've got way more. But like we saw this a ton, and it is a huge growth move to just like a good defense sometimes makes an incredible offense.
Just survive.
And so like just live. Yeah. So anyways, those are the things where people are kind of like, this is a box to check. I don't know why it's worth it, blah, blah, blah. These are the places that it makes real money for operators, for their families, for their companies, for their employees, whatever, is when you do this kind of stuff, this is where it matters.
Yeah, dude.
So
I think that it's safe and fair to say, Like, first of all, thank you for giving us a masterclass for the past hour on this. And for anybody who has been able to stick with us, it's probably safe to say, like, this is the stuff, the blocking and tackling, that makes you a good operator if you happen to do it. So Chase, wrapping up the episode, I want to make sure that anybody who is sticking with us is able to find you, because if they are, it's probably because they got value from you. Like, what would be the place for them to come and get in touch?
Best place is LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of the social media kind of stuff, but I'm definitely on LinkedIn. You can find me Chase Spenst, or Good Operator, or one of those, like, through LinkedIn. That's the best place. If you reach out as a connection or DM me or whatever, I'm usually pretty quick to respond with that. You can find Good Operator at goodoperator.com. Take a look at all of the different stuff we do. That can connect you with, like, newsletter or any other stuff we kind of put out to try and be helpful. But yeah, every once in a while we do workshops, stuff like that. But find me on LinkedIn. That's kind of the best place to make the connection.
Love it. I can attest to that for 100%. I dig the content that you put out there. All right, till next time, trust the process, commit to the journey. Chase, thank you for joining us. Bootstrapping to Billions.
Thanks, Chris.